So today was the day. We got the 2021 AMA with the design director and project lead on Fallout 76. Just yesterday we saw the roadmap, and although it is a very pretty looking roadmap, it was a little bit light on some specifics, some of the details, or even some things in between, not explicitly labeled on the roadmap. And this AMA was able to shed light on a lot of that. We actually discovered a ton of new and additional information, additional details on some things that are coming, some other stuff we thought was coming that now it's pretty clear is not on the horizon, which is a bit saddening. And even one of the things going on behind the scenes or at Bethesda that gets me very hopeful for the future of this game. So in this video, I'm going to recap some of the major takeaways from the AMA if you don't want to read it for yourself. Of course, I'll have a link to this as well as the roadmap itself in the description if you want to check them out for yourself. But before we get into that, I do want to give a shout out to today's video sponsor, Loot Crate. Not too long ago now, Loot Crate launched the Fallout Rad Crate, and it's pretty quickly become a nearly must-buy for every Fallout fan. The February Fallout Crate contains some awesome exclusive items. This high-detail Robo-Brain figurine that makes a great desk prop, the Power Armor Schematic t-shirt, which is easily one of my favorite shirts Loot Crate has done thus far, and the essential Nuka-Shine-styled bladder, for those of you looking for a little midday refresher to keep things interesting. Since 2012, Loot Crate has been the #1 pop culture subscription-based service on the planet, with the main mission of bringing the joy and love of pop culture conventions to fans at home. They work closely with a ton of creators and partners like Warner Bros., Disney, Marvel, and of course, Bethesda. Loot Gaming Crates cater to the video game fans in nearly every household, whether you're old school arcade fans or even looking at the next gen of consoles, as new partnerships with world-renowned game companies are expanding their IP licenses in 2021 and even beyond. But don't wait, whether it's for you or the video game fan in your household, you get 15% off your next crate using the code JuiceHead15 and clicking that link in the video description. So one of the first things we hear about that is actually really exciting is them referring to future updates. In this, they will talk about Update 26, Update 28, as well as Update 32. And although at first glance this may not seem like a big deal, it actually gives us a nice little roadmap or timeline as to what you can expect for the rest of this year. Update 26 is the next one. It's on the public test server right now. We know it's coming out on April 27th, so there's not much to talk about around that. But we do know that Update 28 is slated to be the Steel Rain release. Steel Rain being the summer DLC, and clearly that means Update 27 will happen in between that. So there is an update in between this Locked and Loaded and Steel Rain. So now perhaps that's just going to bring something like Legendary Crafting. It might be disconnected from the Steel Rain storyline and actually come in a standalone update a bit ahead of time, or even just some more bug fixes. I think the schedule that could be playing out with a big content update, then a bug fixing update, then another content update could be a really nice one for Fallout 76 overall. Although we do know that with Steel Rain and Update 28, we are getting some surprises, some things we weren't necessarily expecting. They mention how in Update 28, we'll have a new gold bullion vendor from the Blue Ridge Caravan that will appear on various days in one of the faction hubs. She'll offer up great deals on gold bullion plans and maybe even have some unique offerings from time to time. So it basically seems like there's going to be a new rotating gold bullion vendor. Gold bullion being one of those currencies introduced with Wastelanders for that late game content. And it seems like this could be a very much so permanent addition, that things will get added to this rotating vendor that will be moving around. You probably get better deals there, some unique content from her, sort of like Graham and the emphasis on him in the early days of trading. This is coming seemingly with Update 28, that being the Steel Rain update. And this also does confirm more explicitly that there are some fairly substantial pieces of content not actually on this roadmap. So this roadmap is definitely not comprehensive, because I would have thought something like this would have made it onto it. Even further, one of the questions I asked actually got kind of a confusing response. I asked if there are any plans for Vault 63 in Fallout 76. From day one, there were 3 vaults, Vault 94, Vault 96, and Vault 63. A couple of more have popped up, but they do have purposes already. And we do hear how, yes, we are debuting Vault 63 in our next Daily Ops expansion in Update 26. In addition, we'll be featuring that location as part of the Steel Rain release in Update 28. While we are on the topic of vaults, we're also planning to add Vault 93 into the Daily Ops rotation further down the road. And honestly, now that Fallout 76 has so many vaults and just different numbers that are very similar, I think there's some confusion here. Where it's saying Vault 63 is coming in the next Daily Ops expansion, I believe that's meant to say Vault 96, which is coming in the next Daily Ops expansion, which is on the public test server. We've known that for a bit, but this does confirm that Vault 96 will be a part of the Steel Rain story, which is pretty cool. Now this is where things get interesting. Even though Vault 96 did get some updates around the actual world space itself as a part of daily ops, it largely remained unchanged, just actually kind of got finished more so. The lore itself in the vault was there since beta. So when this is implemented to Steel Rain, it may use this lore, but again, it's literally 2 years plus old now, so they might update this. But basically the theme of this vault was it contained tens of thousands of animals preserved within it, and then a small staff of scientists to kind of hold and keep those animals. The idea being that one day you would perhaps be able to reintroduce them into the world and actually preserve those species. Except once the vault was actually sealed, it was revealed from Vault-Tec the true mission was to actually explore genetic experimentation on those different species of animals and study mutated animals. I won't go too much more deeply into what ended up happening with Vault 96. You could read up on the wiki, but again, this is all very much so subject to change. But there's definitely a lot of cool potential with how they could tie that into the second half of the Brotherhood of Steel questline. It also is an amazing opportunity to even just introduce a new creature into Fallout 76. But then looking back over at the second half of that AMA response with, while we are on the topic of vaults, we are also planning to add Vault 93 into the daily ops rotation further down the road. I'm going to assume that was actually meant to be Vault 63 and he just got the two confused or kind of accidentally invented Vault 93. Vault 63 is the least complete of the 3 original vaults with 96, 94, and 63. So I'm guessing they just are going to add it to the daily ops, make it a cool new dungeon that you can play in, perhaps get added with story DLC later on, but again, it doesn't seem like anything's too far along with that one. Another cool update coming with Steel Rain and Update 28 overall are some new vault shelters. I don't get too explicit as to what they are, but there's a data mine list of all kinds of different shelters found in the files in the past, so it's likely one of those. You can pause the video now if you want to try and speculate as to which one it'll actually be, or which several it may end up being. But then something else that may be coming with Update 28, but at the very least is coming in the Steel Rain DLC cycle this summer, is Legendary Crafting, and we hear some details about that here also. Legendary Crafting will share some similarities to the current module system, and will open it up to all weapons and armor, including power armor. We'll be introducing new types of components that feed into the recipes. You'll be able to roll 1, 2, or 3-star items on the item type you have selected. You can even re-roll a legendary item. And then even further, yes, as part of the Legendary Crafting update, we are planning to add new mods and make balancing improvements to some of the weaker, less used mods. Also, expect even more new mods with the release of 4-star legendaries in Update 32. There's a couple of things to unpack here. One of the first ones I want to back up to is how they refer to this as the Legendary Crafting update. So now, technically, this is just speculation, but right now, of course, we know Steel Rain is Update 28. They have said that explicitly. We know Update 26 is the next one coming in April, so what a lot of speculation has led towards is what if Legendary Crafting, or this Legendary Crafting update as they refer to it, is actually Update 27 and will be split apart as an earlier part of that Steel Rain DLC wave. So under the Steel Rain umbrella will be Update 27 first with the Legendary Crafting, and secondary the Steel Rain story content with Update 28. We have no idea, but it's just something interesting to consider. Now actually unpacking what they said about how this will work, there's a lot of interesting stuff here. They start off by saying Legendary Crafting will share some similarities with the current module system and open it up to all weapons. So right now in game, with some of the gold bullion weapons, after you unlock them, you have to spend some script that you get from scrapping legendary items, and then you could actually buy legendary modules, which will allow you to actually craft that gold bullion based item. And when you do so, you'll get a random 1 to 3-star legendary with random legendary effects, but you are guaranteed a legendary version of that item. So it seems like this new version is going to be similar in that you will be able to do that yet again. Guarantee a legendary version of any weapon, armor, or power armor in the game. You'll be able to just craft it and it will be a guaranteed legendary version, but they do say here there will be new types of components. Right now we only have legendary modules from the Purveyor, but likely there's going to be something a bit more expensive because not only will you be able to actually craft a legendary of whatever thing you want, but also you can specify if it's going to be a 1-star, 2-star, or 3-star. And even this reroll mechanic sounds interesting. Can you do a thing where you like take 3 legendaries you don't really like, put them all together and get one new one that could be better. That's kind of the cost of a reroll. That's how a lot of other games handle stuff like this. So overall, it really seems like this will apply to every item in the game, or at least everything that can spell legendary, including power armor, because this update, or one of these updates, will be adding that. And it'll give the player a lot more autonomy, but before you get too excited, you have to imagine that these new components you're going to be using will have some kind of grind associated with them. Even right now, with the current legendary crafting system, or even just getting legendary items from the purveyor, you quickly run through that daily script limit. You can only get 150 script a day. If they're going to be using the system even more, which it definitely seems like they will be, you have to hope they'll up that 150, or things are going to get very frustrating very quickly, and this might take a really long time. What to me is far more exciting is how they also mentioned that they're going to add new mods and make balancing improvements to some of the weaker, less used mods. So here, a lot of people thought they were just referring to traditional weapon mods, and this may be true, like you put a silencer on some of the weapons in the game, but considering how sparse that is in Fallout 76 overall, what I think they're referring to here are actual legendary effects. Legendary effects are functionally very similar to mods and how they actually work in Fallout 76. Not on the player side in that we can't actually tweak or change those around, but on the back end of the game. They kind of are just a mod added to a weapon. So these being devs, they might have just referred to these as mods, but actually meant legendary effects that are available. And I really hope so, because this is something I've been asking for a very long time, including in literally just my video on the roadmap yesterday. If they're actually going to be doing a full-on balance pass of all the legendary effects in the game and addressing things like Nocturnal, which people just don't want, or even many of the ones that give you bonus damage or bonus resistances against Mirelurks or Scorched, which many people throw away or ignore. Making all of those different or more relevant would be super powerful and a super nice update. But also just adding in new legendary effects in general, which this also would suggest if mods actually do equal legendary effects, would be huge and something I am super excited for. So technically that isn't confirmed, but that's actually my interpretation of that. And one final thing to look at here is they mention Update 32 a few times throughout all of this. And this Update 32 thing is actually getting me more excited than you'd think. Here they reference it with 4-star legendaries, which puts it squarely in that final category of a winter release. And this could be pretty cool because Update 32, one, may be the final update of the year, but also it just seems like the way they're talking about all this stuff that they have a nice clear internal roadmap of when all of this stuff should be coming out. They have it slotted down to Update 26, 7, 8, 9, 10, Update 30, 31, and then finally Update 32 will be the last one of 2021. The past two roadmaps never actually got completed. That whole last column on both of these roadmaps didn't drop. They got pushed back until the next year. But this time around, if they're able to actually say, yeah, in Update 32, 8 months from now, we know we're hoping to add this into the game, that gets me a lot more excited that it's actually gonna happen and they have a much better internal plan for all of this. The next thing they talk about is private worlds, and we got some pretty clear details on this, as well as some quite critical clarifications, or at least to me seem quite critical. So with the reveal of private worlds on this roadmap, and it kind of being cloak and dagger that some kind of updates coming to private worlds, but we don't know what exactly, a lot of people, including myself, may have jumped the gun a bit assuming this would be mod support for Fallout 76. Unfortunately though, it definitely seems like that is at least a ways away. Someone asked the direct question, does this update to private servers in the fall mean mod support? I'm gonna get the answer. We will have a lot more to talk about with this update in the near future, as this will be a huge added benefit to our Fallout First members. To give a hint, think server settings. And then further clarified with, and this is just the beginning, we plan on continuing to build on this feature far into the future. So of course it's quite vague, they still aren't ready to fully divulge any big details, but to me what this is doing is managing expectations. Mods are hugely anticipated, and him responding here with think server settings makes me think that no, mods aren't coming now. And that follow-up answer where they do say we'll continue to build on this feature far into the future is likely as we get into more and more customization options on private servers, eventually being mods. That's not all bad though. Server settings at first glance seems kind of mundane, like oh what, you can make it night all the time or something, but in reality there's a lot of potentially cool stuff that could be implemented with this. If you have a list of let's say 50 different server settings you can tweak, change around, or even just turn on or off completely, that could actually be kind of cool. And one of the other answers around this actually was to a question I asked, where they do respond, I believe the upcoming update to Worlds in Q3 will give players the functionality you're asking for, as it will allow players to add in some PvP elements along with hardcore survival elements to their private worlds as well. And that actually sounds really cool to me. PvP in its own right, having private PvP lobbies with up to 8 people would be pretty exciting on your own private worlds. Nice little 4v4 death matches, or even a hardcore survival could be really cool. My single favorite way to play Fallout 4 is where most enemies will one-shot me, but I also one-shot most enemies. It really ups the stress factor and just makes the whole game a lot more exciting. Unfortunately, even though it seems like private servers are getting big upgrades that will make them a lot more appealing, it also doesn't seem like they're getting any bigger. Somebody did ask if the private server world size would be increased to 12 or even 16 players, and they say, we're actively investigating this, but it's not currently on the roadmap, which to me is actually kind of a bummer. Right now, the way it works with private servers is, if you want a truly proper private server where only people you invite can join, it's using the team system, which means it's limited to 4 people, or you could have the standard one where anyone on your friends list can join, and that'll be open to 8 people. Stuff like that may get tweaked in the future, so you could have a proper invite-only 8-person server, but if some of these server settings are actually really awesome, I could see a lot of people just always playing on private servers, and 8 players isn't that much. It would have been nice to see that up to 20 or even further. Either way though, with this one, I'm curious to see where this goes. I think it could be a really awesome new addition to Fallout 76, depending on the level of customizability. Doesn't seem like mods are there yet, but I have to imagine that's coming, or perhaps I'm just wrong here also, and it actually is mods. Either way, there is definitely still quite a bit of mystery around this one. Why didn't they actually give any details on the roadmap, despite the other stuff all got details? Like, they didn't go super in depth with any of the other things, but they had brief descriptions, where on this one we just got private servers are getting some kind of update. We'll talk about it later. My tinfoil hat theory is the reason they're going to talk about this later is it's going to be a big feature at E3, and it's going to be really cool, so they want to save this big reveal and the big news for E3. On the topic of unlimited season rewards, they mention how it's a non-randomized repeating track of things like lunchboxes, script, gold bullion, etc. So once you complete the season, you could endlessly just earn those things. Considering they don't mention atoms here, I have to imagine that will not actually be a feature of this. I know a lot of people are hoping for that. But script in particular could end up being super valuable depending on some of the additional costs with those legendary changes. One of the other things coming down the road that's not actually mentioned on this roadmap is changes to events. They describe these as coming in update 32, where they do say, I think all of our events are fun, but they may not provide the right incentive for participation. So in update 32, we are going to take a balancing pass, mostly focused on rewards, to try and get better participation in some of these less popular events. This is one of those things that I feel like we've heard mentions of for like 2 years now with a public events secondary update. We got the actual introduction of public events back in 2019, but that could be pretty cool. There's a lot of people right now in public events that just don't do the objective. They just kill enemies endlessly, and seeing an update where you are more incentivized, or perhaps just more so rewarded for actually doing some of the more specific objectives or actually actively participating could be cool. Although on the topic of events, something else not on the roadmap is apparently there is a new public event coming. They mentioned how we have another public event in the works that is Brotherhood of Steel themed. I don't have a specific release time frame just yet, but we aim to have it out before the end of the year. I have to imagine they wanted this to be a part of Steel Reign with the larger Brotherhood update, but it's not going to hit that deadline, so hopefully it'll come out some months after that, perhaps in fall or winter. Either way, that one should hopefully be pretty cool. We only got 2 public events last year. Things have been fairly barren in that whole area as far as updates to Fallout 76 goes. The vast majority of public events are from the base game. And speaking of big events, they actually give us some details on this alien event. We can see it in the winter part of the roadmap, that with Invaders from Beyond, where they do say, we've been talking internally about doing something fun with the Zetan since before we launched the game. So we're excited to finally have the chance to do something with them. We're working on a new feature we call public challenges. That will be similar to the seasonal events, but will be global to the world and encourage players to work together to succeed. We will showcase the Zetans in our first one and plan to add more in the future. This is actually really interesting to me, this whole public challenges concept. This also does in fact confirm that the Invaders from Beyond event will feature Zetans. Of course, we could see a spaceship in the image, but it wasn't technically confirmed at this point. So yes, Zetans are finally getting a spot in Fallout 76. Technically right now in game, the only living one you could find is the Flatwoods monster. The rest are all dead. But back to this public challenges concept, what this sounds like to me is almost a crossover between a seasonal event and something like Fortifying Atlas or Project Clean Appalachia. Like during Fortifying Atlas, the community had to collect a bunch of resources and deposit them at Atlas Observatory. And then over time, as more milestones were hit by the community overall and the tracker was updated, the location was updated also. I wouldn't be shocked if they're actually gamifying that a bit more, so it's not just mundane junk collecting, but actually doing something during a limited time event that described by this public challenge. Something I've been wanting for a super long time for Fallout 76 is a way for the community to collectively do something and it actually change the world. Like you'd help the Brotherhood or the Enclave, and depending on which side you help, a new shop will pop up at White Springs or something along those lines. It's not clear if that's what this is going to be, but either way, it sounds super interesting to me, and it definitely gets me more excited for this actual DLC itself, but then also where they take this idea in the future. They talk a bit about a Halloween event, saying the team is rethinking how we're approaching Halloween events as we know how exciting they are to fans and in service to the Fallout lore. Unfortunately, Mischief Night caused many server issues and we're looking to replace it with a new event, which we're aiming to have out this Halloween. Last year, we didn't really have any Halloween event. We had Mischief Night one year, but it seems like that is gone forever now. Either way, nice to see that there is yet another event coming that isn't on the roadmap, or at least hopefully is coming. And then we also hear a bit about pets. We have some fun things in the works for pets. Over time, we want to provide a wide variety of different types of pets that you can customize and have both in your camp and shelters. Initially, we will offer up different dogs, expand to cats, then go from there. Suggestions for other pet types are welcome. And then someone said they should add a pet liberator, and then they said that is definitely going to be added to the list, so that's cool. I have to imagine the reason they're starting with dogs is if you just look over at that Fallout 4 Creation Club, there are a ton of dog models they could just literally put in Fallout 76. They mention expeditions also. Expeditions were one of the big things that were mysteriously missing from the 2021 roadmap, and they were actually on the 2020 roadmap. They say they still have big plans for expeditions. We're as bummed as you that they'll be slipping out of this year's roadmap. We're still iterating on the design for expeditions, so we will share more details as we get closer to releasing them. The big takeaway here is yes, these will take you outside of the current map. They are their own new feature and we are committed and very excited to make them. As I discussed in my main video on expeditions, I think what happened was they were originally going to be little small missions that took you out of the map, like almost like a daily op but set in a different place, or at least that's what I thought originally. But over time, it almost seems like they're becoming more little DLCs. Like maybe we'll go on an expedition to Washington, DC and actually have a ton of quests or events we can do there specifically, and you could travel back to Appalachia. I'm really excited for this one. I think it's going to be one of the big things we see in 2022, and I do hope it comes in the earlier half of 2022. We don't technically know where these will be set, but considering West Virginia is very close to Washington, D.C., Fallout 3 took place in Washington, D.C., that seems like a very obvious choice. Not to mention, it'll be a super unique experience in that you could experience Washington, D.C. in 2103 in Fallout 76, and then several hundred years later in Fallout 3. But that's just one example. Of course, it could be a totally new location or some other area that we've seen before. With that said, now we have a bunch of stuff that they addressed or mentioned but aren't coming or don't have concrete plans for being added anytime soon. They mentioned how hiding backpacks for cosmetic reasons is another great idea we're talking about internally. Shared stash space was a big question. They said it's a great idea, and like many things, shared stash space is on a to-do list. It's just a matter of finding the time to get it done. That being so, on all of your various characters, you have one central stash you can access. New allies are apparently coming, but there's no ETA on when they're coming. Vertical and horizontal half walls, as well as half floor variants, are apparently coming at some point, but further out. There's a question on opening up some of the boarded up buildings in Appalachia. So those buildings you could find that you just can't enter into. They say how we're always looking for opportunities to add more life into the world, and one of the best ways is to find locations in the world that don't have a whole lot going on and open them up. There's a question as to why there are so few character customization options on the Atomic Shop, like tattoos, hairstyles. And they say that honestly they have a largely negative impact on the game's performance and they're difficult to make. They still want to add more in the future, but they have to solve the technical problems first. Apparently more social features are coming to the future of Fallout 76, but it's too early to discuss details on them. In the question, guilds and clans, text chat, as well as a mail system were mentioned, but there's no concrete examples as to what social features were getting added. Allies will not be coming to shelters anytime soon. Apparently it's quite tricky to do. Somebody asked if there are any plans to add an ability to drop old quest items. They mentioned how there's a long list of quality of life features we want to address. This one is a bit trickier, so I can't promise we knock that one out anytime soon, but something we are investigating and would like to add is keyrings, which is very exciting. Exterior wall customization is on the to-do list, but still a ways out, as well as a better way to loot legendary enemies you have taken down, but that too is a ways out. And there was a question on 5-star legendaries getting added now that 4 stars are on the roadmap, and they simply responded, "Rats, you foiled our plan," with a winky face, likely meaning that 5 stars will come at some point in the future, probably next year. And yeah, that was a good overview of a lot of the new details we found out during this AMA. It actually did get me a bit more excited about the future. I'm disappointed mods aren't coming, but I'm happy to see that this roadmap isn't comprehensive. There are still plans for some stuff in between these major pillars. And if they actually are doing a legendary rebalance, that is something I've been asking for like a year and a half, so I would be incredibly excited for that addition, which could just be a couple of months away now. But an interesting point with Fallout 76, I feel like the next time we'll find out major new stuff is probably E3 or whatever Bethesda summer event is. We don't know when that is. Is it going to be in June like they typically do, or perhaps later in July or August? This next patch is still a little over a month away now, and we've mostly done the testing. It actually just got another update on the public test server today. But overall, yeah, that's a bit of a more in-depth look as to what you can expect from the future of this game. I'm definitely excited. I'd love to hear from you guys in the comments down below. What do you think about the AMA? What do you think about some of these responses or where this game is heading? With that said, as always, again, I thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed this one, and I hope to see you all next time. Later.